Before we get into the video today, let me just say real quick, I'm still experimenting, trying to figure out what you guys like and don't like. If you have any suggestions, if you like this video, if you don't like this video, let me know in the comments down below so I can adjust accordingly. How's everybody doing? Welcome to the first episode of Maintenance Mondays. The premise of this series is that once every other week, on weeks when we don't have Tree Tuesdays, you're going to follow me around dealing with whatever situations I have to deal with, specifically pertaining to the upper gardens, which basically are the smaller gardens where I do the trees and some experimental organic vegetables and stuff. And these are all gardens that you could absolutely replicate at home. And everything I'm going to be doing here is stuff that you could potentially use on your own gardens and home farming projects. So today, what we have on the docket, we need to take a look at the irrigation system. The irrigation system's out in the upper gardens, so we need to check that out, find out what's wrong with it, find out what we can do to deal with it. Number two, we need to look at the cabbage. Unfortunately, I have a lot of cabbage that got in the ground too late. Summer is coming up on us fast, and for those of you who don't know, cabbage will wilt and burn in the summer heat. The last thing, we're going to be collecting and setting up to dry some herbs and tea leaves and things like that, and I'm going to be showing you the process that I use for herb drying. There's a couple different ways to go about it. I'm going to show you my favorite. I'm going to show you which one's fastest, and you can go ahead and put that knowledge to use for yourself. So let's go ahead and get started, because I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, and if I sit in this chair too much longer, I'm going to pass out. So here we are at the irrigation system. The problem here is this switch is not engaging into the auto or the on position. We're gonna have to go ahead and take this thing apart and see what's going on inside. So, quick public service announcement before we get started. Anytime you're gonna work on one of these things, make sure that you got this breaker in the off position. This does have full 110 power running through it. It's not a low voltage line. It is dangerous, so be careful. So, here is our problem. This is what is called a 3-position switch, and the part that holds the 3-position switch in with the screw has cracked, unfortunately. The way that it's supposed to work, now this is entirely mechanical, this 3-position switch has 3 positions, guess, and one of them, the off position, puts no pressure on this selector. One of them, the auto position, puts some pressure on the selector, just enough that engaging the timer here will turn the system on. Now the on position puts enough pressure on the selector that it remains on regardless of the position of the timer. This thing being broken means that the system cannot operate. I can manually turn it on and off if I run power through this and we're dumb enough to stick my finger or a screwdriver in there or something. Even then, I would have to maintain the pressure. I did contact an irrigation company. They can get me one of these 3-position switches, or they can replace the box. I need to make a decision, so I need to see times on all of those, see how viable any of it is. For the time being, we're going to come up with an alternate solution for watering. So, some good news and some bad news. First off, we're gonna have to hand water all the plants, so that's gonna be kind of a pain. The good news is that because of the season, only about half the garden beds are planted. So it's not going to be as much work as it potentially could have been. Most of the cold weather crops are in. Most of the warm weather crops are not in the ground yet. So that's a good thing. It also gives me a chance to go ahead and show you some of the things that I do. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm doing here, I am adding a homemade compost tea mix to these crops. Now, this is mostly compost tea. I add a little bit of wood ash and a little bit of bone meal as needed. Put this stuff down right before you water. In this case, I did it right after because my sprayer wasn't working. But either way, you just want to make sure that you're not going to nitrogen burn the plants. Now, typically I would only use this stuff about once a week, but because I'm trying to get these cabbages up and out of the ground, I'm trying to do whatever I can to supercharge them. If I burn them, I burn them, because if not, they're going to burn anyway. So we're in the back here, lower frame center. Those are cucumbers that I'm growing specifically to make organic pickles. So it's going to be homegrown organic cucumbers pickled in homegrown organic spices. Lower frame right, those are the Farm Friday loquats that we planted a couple of weeks ago. And then way in the back there are the first 50 loquat trees that I've planted for this year. That's the first 50 out of about 500 is my target. So most of the plants here haven't popped up yet. They're still in very rich soil with plenty of compost that's just been added to it. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to give them any fertilizer or compost tea or anything like that. We just need to make sure they've got water to help them along their way and go on about our business. So I went to go head over to the other side of the house, and I realized that the back of my truck was full of tree material. We had a couple of limbs come down, and I had to cut them up, and I didn't put them away. So I had to go head over to an empty piece of land and dump all that out of the back of my truck, and that's what you're seeing me do here. And then we'll finally get over to the other side and the experimental garden. So here we are at another batch of the organic cabbages that I've been experimenting on. And the experiment here was testing to find the minimum pot size, as well as testing different organic compounds and their capabilities as pest deterrents. Now we're in the tree and the main experimental garden. This is basically a small, roughly like maybe a quarter acre patch of ground, and then there is 2 levels of terrace up here. I'm not going to make you watch me water all these because I think you get the idea. And then we're going to go ahead and get into pulling the herbs and stuff like that. So first thing we're harvesting here is these garlic scapes. It's really good for the plant to do this, by the way. These are the grass shoots that grow out the top. You can dry these. They got a real good, strong taste. They're very juicy. You can use them fresh as a spice. And it's good for the plant because cutting these causes the plant to focus on growing the bulb, which is obviously the most important part. This here is a project that I'm working on that my girlfriend kind of inspired. It's a spice box that's going to be 6 different spices, but unfortunately, cilantro grows much faster than the rest of those things. So we have some cilantro here we can clip up. What we're doing now is we're going to be harvesting some loquat leaves. These are used in teas. Dry them and sell them as a tea or use them in a tea blend. And you're gonna look for, you want dark green hard leaves like this that are unblemished, and they need to be preferably at least a year old because those are the ones that have the most tannin. And we're gonna pick a lot of these because they are kind of my backbone crop. Like, they are one of our biggest money makers. So the last thing we're picking here is sorrel. Just pull the leaves off. Sorrel's pretty much a garden weed. It'll grow on its own. You don't even need to plant it. It has a great lemony taste to it. And you can dry it and add it into tea mixes to give them a natural kind of lemony kick. A lot of my tea mixes have sorrel in them and peppermint. Those are kind of my secret weapons. And each thing we harvest, I'm just going ahead and packing them into some baggies. You can just throw them in a bucket, but right now, for the sake of organization, because we're going to be clipping plenty of things, I'm going to separate them. So that's it. We've got ourselves plenty of loquat leaves, we've got some garlic scapes, we've got ourselves some cilantro, and we've got some sorrel. We've got it all bagged up. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about drying it. So for real moist and especially long things like these garlic scapes, a great thing is to hang them, right? All I've done here is I've taken a couple of chip clips and I've hung them from ceiling fan chains. You can hang them just about anywhere. These ones I do like this because this is in my kitchen, and these are, you know, for personal use. It makes them really easily accessible. These ones here are already dried out. It takes a couple of weeks to get this way. Once they're dried out, you can go ahead and put them in a mason jar for personal use. They'll keep quite a long time that way. If you're gonna sell them, like when we have like large amounts of them, the thing to do is probably to weigh them and bag them up. At least that's how I handle it. But this right here, great way to dry things out. The only downside is it's not particularly the fastest way. So say you have something that's not particularly conducive to hanging, right? For example, these cilantro leaves we just harvested. The best thing to do is to lay them all out. You can do this on a plate, on a cutting board. That's personally my favorite, is using a cutting board. Just make sure it's real clean. You want to lay and separate them out from one another. And then you're just going to leave them like that for a couple of weeks, maybe even a week, until they start to get nice and dry. If you're doing this right, they should maintain their green color when they dry out, right? That's also true for the ones that we hung up earlier. Now, as somebody who does organic farming and who sells things as organic, this is how I do everything, one of these two ways. Personally, I just feel that if you're gonna sell organic things and if you're gonna put that kind of price tag on it, you need to do things in the best way possible, and hanging or table drying, although it's a much slower process, maintains the flavor best of whatever it is you're drying, be it spices or teas. Now the last way to go about this, the way that I don't particularly use, but it is the fastest, and if you're not concerned about losing just a little bit of flavor, it will work just fine, is to lay out all of your spices, whatever it is you're trying to dry, on an oven-safe tray, and we're going to go ahead and pop them into the oven at 150 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 degrees Celsius. If you put them any hotter than that, you're gonna end up burning them. You don't want that. You can leave them in here for a few hours. I think that the easiest thing to do is just to check them and let yourself figure out when they're dry. So no matter how you go about doing your drying, the finished product is going to look something like this. It's going to maintain most of its green color, not all of it, and it's going to be dry and crumbly to the touch. You can then go about storing it however you want. This works for just about every herb and tea that I make. Now obviously it loses out a little bit flavor-wise compared to the fresh product, but this has a much longer shelf life, and obviously that's got a lot of advantages. So that's about it, guys. All I've got left to do is, as I head back, check all the cabbages and see which ones, like this guy here, are gonna be ready to harvest in a day or two. Which ones, like this guy here, are probably a week away. Which ones are gonna be compost. Then I'm gonna head in, I'm gonna hit the gym and take a shower and sit down and watch a Braves game. Let me know if you guys like this type of video. If you do, if this goes over well and I'm making another one in the 2 weeks, I'll probably hire somebody to operate the camera for me, because to be honest, it's been quite a chore and I'm sure a lot of the shots aren't gonna look great. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Anything you have to say, let me know down below. It really makes my day when you do, and I hope I'll see you Farm Fridays. Peace.